As the official healthcare provider of Minnesota United, Allina Health is dedicated to delivering pro-level care for our Loons. But our partnership goes much deeper than what happens on the field. From our shared support of youth-focused nonprofits like Roots for the Home Team to empowering adaptive athletes through the MNUFC Power Soccer Team, Allina Health and Minnesota United are committed to making our communities all together better. Learn more at allinahealth.org/loons. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Sound of the Loons. We have a very special episode heading into the Western Conference Semifinal game against LA Galaxy, another playoff edition for Minnesota United, and also after a couple weeks off for the international break. And I get to be joined by the maestro of the midfield. I just came up with that, Hassani Dotson. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I can't complain, except you do see my turtleneck. It kind of looks like a neck brace. I feel like I should maybe change this. I feel like I'm going to get made fun of at some point. But that just means that the weather is turning colder here in Minnesota, which you can appreciate just coming in from training.
Yep. I mean, I think turtlenecks are in, so I think you're all good.
Yeah, I mean, there's this one Spanish commentator that always has a turtleneck on with like a wool jacket.
Mhm.
But he comes to Minnesota and it's like 70 out and he's wearing a turtleneck with a jacket. You know, he's from Miami, so what are you gonna do?
Right.
But you're from the Pacific Northwest, so you're ready. You're ready for this cold climate that we have here.
Yeah, a little bit more rain. Not quite as cold, but I mean, I can manage. It's not bad.
This is kind of like sleeting gross though. Like actually the last few days I've kind of felt like I lived in Seattle when it was just raining. Did you
Yeah.
feel a little like the Pacific Northwest vibes for a bit there?
Yeah, definitely, especially with the wind coming in. Yeah. Sweet home.
Um, yeah. Oh man, I'm not gonna lie. I hate clouds. Hate it. I cannot do clouds. I just need sun. I don't care. I need sunshine. So, hey, so I want to ask you first and foremost, how has 2024 been for you thus far? We can deep dive into going back to the beginning of the season, Eric Ramsey being named the head coach. I mean, now it feels like an eternity ago, right? But that's all everybody. Khaled just sent me something that you guys have created, your sports digital people over there, about how I picked Minnesota United to finish 10th. He sent that to me. And I was like, thank you for rubbing it in my face. But that feels like a distant memory, doesn't it now? The chaos of the beginning of the season of not knowing what it was going to look like. And here you guys are in the Western Conference semifinal.
Yeah, it's been a long season, and especially with how our season has unfolded. You know, we had a couple great patches, and obviously one bad one leading up to the summer. Um, but yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and I think we're all pretty happy we are where we're at right now.
When you look at you in particular in this season, and now, I mean, feels like yesterday that you were drafted and, you know, stepping in. I remember it distinctly in the right back role in a game in Vancouver, you know, when you guys were trying to hang on to a lead. And I remember Adrian Heath saying, hey, this guy can handle these moments. Then obviously the injury comes, but you come back. There's some flux in the midfield. How do you view this moment in your career, 2024, clearly a centerpiece for the midfield for Minnesota United? How do you view you in this stage of your career at this point?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think I've noticed that I do best when I just take it one day at a time and not worry too much about the future or some uncertainties that may lie. It was funny though. My dad, he'll send me some clips after the game, and I think it was after the Colorado game I scored, and they called me a veteran, and we just started laughing a little bit because it feels like you said just yesterday I was drafted. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to be where I'm at right now and to help the team succeed. So yeah.
You talk about where you were, you know, in 2019 and where you are now. And I know we're kind of jumping all over the place and taking it one day at a time. But what is different in this moment in your life when you get to experience all these things with a family? I mean, that's like totally different too, right? I mean, every little thing coming to the game and we get to see it, right? The little kids kicking the ball in the net post game, everybody's families are around. What's it like for you to be able to experience these moments with a family?
Yeah, I mean it's great, especially after games we win, my daughter gets to go out on the field, and I mean for me it brings me a nice, I guess balance that you can say. I go to work, I do my best, and I come home to my wife and daughter, and it's like I'm trying to grow both sides, of my life, and it's just great that looking back, I am where I wanted to be so many years ago.
When
Yeah.
you look at, speaking of family, you just had, what was it, 3 weeks off since your last game? I'm not saying 3 weeks off completely here, but with this international break, it's kind of been wonky. What did you get to do during that time when you guys did have a few off days, when your schedule was switched around a little bit? What was Halloween like? I mean, all those kinds of things. Give people the inside scoop.
Yeah, I mean, at our household, we celebrate Halloween pretty big. Um,
Really? Okay, so like the
yeah,
house is all decked out. Like, did you guys get trick-or-treaters and stuff?
yeah. I
Okay.
mean, the house is it's pretty a big deal. My wife, she enjoys it, so Halloween's pretty big. And then I mean, my daughter, she'll be 3 at the end of January, so now she's really starting to understand a little better. So we took her trick-or-treating in our neighborhood and across the street, and we are vampires, if
I was
everyone
just gonna ask you. Okay,
wants
what
to
was she?
know.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a great time, and then we just enjoyed some little things. They were a little sick, so it was kind of low key. They're in the break, just trying to get the body right, and yeah.
Nice. I know I think every single person, not even just from a soccer perspective, but from a family perspective, balancing that, right? When you have the time at home versus the time you're going to work, but you're still trying to stay focused, but not let it overwhelm your brain and your mind. And so I don't know about you, but like I feel like when you get back home, it's like it could be go one of two ways. You could totally, because they don't care, especially if your daughter's not even 3.
Mhm.
They don't care what just happened at training or what just happened in the game. Like you're gonna walk in that door and she's gonna just want, run into your arms and you want to be daddy at that point. You don't need to be anything else. So does that help sort of on a tough day? Or is it hard to kind of like push past that and focus, and let go of some of the harder moments?
I think for me it's easier because I'm pretty competitive, and so
Yeah.
once I come home and I see my wife and daughter, and she comes running up to me at the door. It's easy for me just to let whatever happened at training or in the game like kind of go, and I can just be soft and gentle, and I'm pretty relaxed, so it's great. Great.
You don't give your daughter any of that like disappointing, like what the heck were you doing right there? Look, like
Um,
I've seen you do that on the field, which is like, what was that? Like you
yeah,
you,
yeah.
you do that to your daughter ever?
Yeah, no, I mean, I try to teach her a little, like if she wants something, make her work for it a little bit. But I mean, I've been told she kind of behaves the same as I did as a kid. So a lot of energy, a lot of fun, and just try to get it all out. So yeah.
Yeah, that's what my mom says. I'm always like, gosh, what is wrong, with my daughter? This is crazy. And my mom's like, you were a spoiled brat. Like you were obnoxious. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, maybe somehow it does run through the gene pool. Okay, so big game coming up. How
Hmm.
have you been able to prepare? I don't really want to look back at the previous series, which you guys handled Real Salt Lake, which maybe people didn't expect in the 2 games, but you handled them and it just now feels so long ago. How have you been able to prepare and what have you done as a team and you personally during this break from a soccer perspective? How has Eric Ramsey and the staff tried to balance this time off, this preparation? How much film work when you're looking at LA Galaxy?
Yeah, I think this is probably, a difficult time frame for like coaches, to properly, get everyone on the same page. But hasn't been an overload of information, which I've heard from other peers could be a little much during, this 3 week window. But you can see that he slowly starts implementing us, to get ready in drills, and we're slowly starting to continue to ramp up. And now that we have everyone back, on the training field, you're starting to see a better picture of, what we're trying to do. And it helps that we played them twice earlier in the year. So we're really familiar with their strengths and weaknesses and how they can hurt us and how we can hurt them. And it's just about, trying to, make sure we're compact and everyone's on the same page. So we can all help each other, get the result.
Is it difficult to switch your mindset as a player, knowing you just came from a best of three to now it's a one and done scenario? Or is that just, I mean, honestly, like most often, that is just kind of American sports, right? I mean, oftentimes it can be a one and done or like a best of whatever series, but when you switch that way in the middle of a playoffs, is that hard to get your mind around that now?
For me, not really, just because like anyone can win in soccer, and if you lose the first game, the other team has even that much more momentum to come away with the second win, or so I think this one is it might be a little easier. You're not thinking, strategically, maybe we give this guy a rest or this guy a rest. You can just throw everything at it, and try to get the win, right then and there.
What's been the best part about Eric Ramsey as a head coach and the way this season has gone? What is the thing as you've gotten to know him, his style, and the entire coaching staff for that matter? Because you can't dismiss, what Cameron Knowles did before everybody even came in and took over. But what have you enjoyed the most about the way this team plays, the way he coaches? What is it about that you've liked that the way he's done something?
I think, in the past I've had like a lot of different coaches, but I think one thing that's really helped this group is he's really open for communication. Um, he's really positive. Um, Even though, you can sense like a little, I mean, we're disappointed in ourselves or we know that we can do better. He holds us to, the standard that we need to hold ourselves to, but he's always doing it in a positive outlook that, we're in this together. Like I haven't given up on you. I know you can do better. Like let's sit down and figure out how we can get on the same page or overcome this. I think like when you have people coming with different backgrounds, I think that's shown really effective. And then like another thing is, just the intensity that he comes, with like simple passing drills, he'll come out and, demonstrate with us, just to start it off. And, I think his youth and his eagerness, leads on to some of us on the field.
I've talked to Michael Boxall a lot about his different partners that he's had in the center back pairings throughout his career, especially with Minnesota United. But even for you guys in the midfield, I know that most oftentimes you're alongside Will Trapp, but you've had other players in and alongside you, in and around you, even with some of the different formations that you guys play, other guys that float inside at times. How have you been able to navigate that in your professional career, learning the different systems, learning each teammate, the way they like to play, who you can lean on for what? How have you navigated that? And maybe what's your favorite role? If you were like, I want to play this way in this position every game, what would that look like?
Yeah, so I'll start off with the first one. I think getting to know how the person plays on the field and a little bit of their personality um kind of enable like helps me be able to play with them. Like, I think Will, just the way he plays, he likes to get on the ball. Um Really, I'd say honest, and trustworthy. So I know, that kind of helps me. I guess I'd say like I can go leave the middle, go try to find the game a little bit. I know he'll be there, and I know the other way around. If he needs to go forward, I can, I'll cover for him. Um, and I think that has really helped me because if I know there's a guy who's a little bit more risky, then I have no problem sitting back, staying home and, let him, do what he does best. In terms of my favorite position. I like to defend. I like, to, go in 1v1 duels, but I also like to be able to, roam a little bit, drive with the ball in transition. So like I can't say one position, but just I like to I guess a box to box midfield I think is something that I've enjoyed and I think that's something that Eric has allowed me to do more frequently within our structure because it allows me, to influence the game in different areas at certain times. So yeah.
Is there other players? You just mentioned what Will has kind of enabled you to do, right? And I think there's just, it's like a security blanket, sort of like he's clearly a veteran of this league. You know that he's going to read the game that's in front of him. So if others are driving forward, even if an outside back drives forward, he's going to stay home in that position, whatever, he's going to cover. Who else, since Eric has come in, or maybe even since your summer acquisitions have come in, have maybe changed the way that you've been able to play? Because I feel like Robin's role has kind of been able to change a little bit, like less pressure on him to maybe be creative when Joaquin came in, or the way Bongi's been utilized and playing, the way you've been playing more like box to box, getting higher. Who else has sort of utilized you to be? And I didn't even mention Kelvin, but like free flowing in the attack, maybe where you can have more creativity and license to go forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think on the other side is Robin. He's comfortable to drop in and like he's comfortable to play a lot of positions. And so like we have this little understanding, like if he comes deep for the ball, I know that he's looking for my run and vice versa. So I think with him, it's more of the flow of the game. If he hasn't touched the ball a little bit, I'll tell him, yo, come back and get the ball, and then I'll just occupy that space so no one follows him out there. Not with him and I, it's just, that's years of experience. And Joaquin, he's pretty technical himself, and you could tell that he's looking to combine. So I think with the four of us, kind of all having a little bit of like center mid traits, it all, kind of helps us to be on the same page. And then you have someone like Kelvin who is thinks exactly like a striker, how you want him to be, head down, look for the goal. And so, we let him focus on that and, us to create. So, yeah.
So when you look at LA Galaxy and the series upcoming, you mentioned it. You've already played them twice this year. You guys, I think it was on the road. You lost 2-1 at LA, and then it was a 2-2 draw, I think, in May. When you look at this LA Galaxy team, and they've changed a bit throughout the season as well, and have new acquisitions. And I don't want to use the word like who are you afraid of, but when you look at this team as you in your position, who do you look on the other side of the ball and go, okay, that guy can cause us some damage. Is there a player out of all the attacking pieces that they have that you are hyper focused on because of maybe your position or just knowing what they're capable of?
Yeah, I mean, just because I'm in the middle, I'd definitely say Ricky. I mean, that's nothing taking away nothing from their other attackers, because they can, rip up a game just by themselves. But for me personally, just the way he demands the ball, runs everywhere to get the ball, he ticks for them. And when we played them away, they were getting a lot of good results without him. And I remember like, some of the, media were like, oh, like we don't know, he had a lot of pressure. And I was like, no, like they don't understand, when he's in the game, they're a lot better. So yeah, that's someone that I'm definitely focused on. And Delgado, I think his name is, he does a good job of, dropping back and make sure that he gets the ball. But yeah, he's my main focus, I'd say.
So what is the most difficult aspect of Ricky's game from your perspective? You just mentioned he runs all over the place. He's kind of tireless in his work and he kind of pops up in different parts of the field. For you, what is the hardest part about covering him, keeping an eye on him, or what makes him so difficult?
For me, it's he's able to drive with the ball in pretty small windows. Um, Obviously, he has a green light, so he doesn't care about taking risks and whatnot. But I think he's really dangerous when he gets the ball and he can drive through the lines with the ball rather than only just passing. Obviously, he's a great passer. He has a lot of assists, but I think that's what really opens up the game for them and creates 1v1 matchups on the outside for their attackers. So, trying to limit that and trying to make him, make, long distance passing, I think would be, neutralize him to a certain extent. So yeah.
With Paintsel and Peck and that sort of dynamic with the play in the wide areas, does that just make it more challenging in the sense that not only are they pacey, but when they have the ball or the big switch or a diagonal ball or finding Ricky in an area where you think you have him maybe contained, meaning the Galaxy, not just Ricky, to one side of the field, how quickly that can happen and go out the other way. Is it that sort of three-headed monster and then whoever they play at the number nine that has made this Galaxy team so good for how much you've probably watched of them? And maybe you saw the Colorado series. I don't know that anybody expected them to sort of dismantle the Colorado Rapids that handily in both games. But is that part of what makes it more challenging is when you have someone that's a team that's so dynamic and has so many different options in the attack?
Yeah, and I think, with Colorado, they're trending downwards towards their season. But you definitely don't want to play, that same type of, counterattacking open field play with them because they're so athletic and so, I guess you'd say, technically gifted that when the ball goes out the peck, you need someone inside covering so, can make it predictable for our defender. But then if you double a little, Ricky has a little space and then he can go to Pansel and it's it's a it's a little bit hard to deal with, but when we stay compact, if you're disciplined, if you don't, let the game break wide open, to this back and forth basketball type game, it's easier to solve than that. So
You guys on the road, 27 points on the road this season. I think best in the Western Conference, if not maybe best in the league. But clearly, you guys have found some success on the road, which normally in the past with Major League Soccer has sort of been the bugaboo is like, hey, get a point on the road, get your draws on the road and win at home. So what is it about this team and the comfort level on the road? And what do you guys need to do offensively? We just talked a lot about defensively and not getting caught in that like fast break basketball type of game, but what do you guys need to do to find success on the attacking end against this team?
yeah, I think for us, we've been able to bounce back off of disappointing home results to get those road victories. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on the group, like self-made pressure, to get, back on track. Um, and I think for us offensively, like we started the Salt Lake game, when you defend for different spells, you need to take a deep breath and, grow into the game yourselves. I think that's something that, we could work on. But that's the main focus, All right, we defended for a little bit. Now we're on the ball. Trust what you can do. Get the ball to wide area, switch the point of attack, and don't rush it. Don't feel like you need to score immediately. Because opportunities will be there, but take your time a little bit and rest while you're on the ball, and then go from there.
And lastly, just when you look at the players that were acquired in the summer transfer window and how they sort of melded in and meshed with the group. I mean, Yeboah has scored some goals. I would say Joaquin, has maybe taken a little bit more time to just sort of like find his groove. And then obviously Diaz just slotted right into that center back position. Um, when you look at how those three specifically, I know there was more acquisitions than that, but those are the main three guys that have seen the most minutes. What has allowed them sort of to thrive in this environment and how this team has implemented them?
I think just the competition aspect, like Tanny, how good he was playing, he pushes Kelvin every day and vice versa. Joaquin, he's getting pushed. I just, I mentioned before all the midfield pieces, including Carlos, who's now playing center back. Jefferson, he came in, obviously, had some rust, with us, and he's playing terrific right now. So I think just the competition we have in the team in each of those positions is able to, push them and sharpen their tools and training, and they all have great confidence. So, you see each game day that they're not afraid to risk anything.
Awesome. I'm sure you guys are just like so ready to get to LA and play this game. Did it feel like a negative or a positive that you guys had this time off? Because you guys were on a roll. You had some momentum there. I mean, I feel like that's nobody wants 3 weeks off. But, you took care of the team, in 2 games instead of having to play a decisive third on the road, which is a plus, but also a minus because you get like another week.
Mhm.
But how much does it feel like? Does it feel like this momentum and energy has been dampened a little bit? Or now that you're like, it's like right here in front of you, you guys just can't wait to get on the plane, head to LA, and get this thing going on Sunday?
Yeah, I think the biggest positive is that, there's everyone's pretty much healthy. Obviously, a negative is, you're not everyone's, clicking how they were, especially towards the end of the season. But for most of us here, we've been in that position, so it's more about, slowly, tuning yourself to optimize to play, the first playoff game back. But I think everyone's ready and excited, and they're just, itching to start this game.
Anything can happen. I mean, I'm sure you have Atlanta beating Miami in the Eastern Conference side of the bracket.
Yeah, I mean that's more difficult than a one-off game, especially with some of the controversial calls that happened there. But
I'll
yeah,
leave that for you.
it's MLS playoffs. Like you said, anything could happen.
Anything can happen. Well, thanks, Hassani. I appreciate it. Get home to your family. Enjoy Los Angeles, a little bit of sunshine, and I'll be tuning in on Sunday to see that game. So thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
You too. All right, everybody, stay tuned. Sacha Kljestan from Major League Soccer, from MLS, Apple 360, whatever else it is, coming up next, segment number 2. Are you ready to take your Loons fandom to the next level? Join Minnesota United's official season ticket waitlist, The Preserve, for just $25 to get early access to tickets and first shot at securing available season tickets in 2026. Visit MNUFC.com/tickets/preserve to become a member today. All right, everybody, we are back for segment number 2 of Sound of the Loons, presented by Allina Health. And this time I get to be joined by MLS, I was going to say season pass, MLS 360 analyst. I better get this right, or I might not have a job next year if I don't get that one right. Sacha Kljestan, thank you for joining me. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day, prepping for the weekend and the playoffs. Thanks for taking the time.
No worries. Happy to be here. Anytime to talk playoff soccer is the best time.
Well, so have you really wrapped your brain around? I know you've been retired now for over a year, but have you wrapped your brain around like having to talk about it all the time and not being able to play it anymore? And like when you see both of your, actually 3 of your former teams still in the postseason, does it make you be like, what the?
Yeah, of course I miss it. I miss playing when the games matter so much and playing in front of big crowds and getting amped up. I still play on the weekends in New York in a Saturday morning league called the Bowery Premier League. And unfortunately, I hurt my knee pretty bad about 2 weeks ago, and I never really had a major injury throughout my entire career. And my wife keeps reminding me, at least it happened now, not in the middle of the playoffs where you'd be missing a big moment. So now I'm injured and I still get to work and I still get to watch these great teams play and talk about it. It's awesome.
I feel like I thought you were going to say my wife reminds me every day that I'm old. Because like that's
Yeah,
how I feel.
that too, for sure.
Well, and we saw when you were playing with Des Moines, right? I mean, that was kind of like your ability to go the distance in that game and then have to turn around and play again. It's just, you almost did your body kind of forgets like, oh crap, that's right. That's what that took to do that at
Oh
that high
yeah.
level.
Yeah, when you're not training every single day and you just go out and play on the weekends, I think a lot easier to get injured nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. Is it a men's league or is it co-ed or what is it?
No, it's a men's league. It's called the Bowery Premier League. It's 7v7. It's actually a pretty good level. We've got quite a few former pros on our team. And throughout the league, it's a bunch of guys that played in college, a bunch of younger guys that can run hard and tackle hard. And it's tough on us old guys.
Well, I don't know how you feel about this, and we'll just get to this real quick before we dive into the playoffs here. But I was playing at a co-ed league on like, they get those Friday night games at like 10 p.m. indoors here in Minnesota. And I would sub every once in a while when they were always short on girls. But you'd go and you'd play against these guys that were used to like ruling this co-ed league. And then you'd get the guys that would come home that used to play college or whatever, and they'd play on, during the holidays, and they didn't like that. They didn't like that all of a sudden they weren't like,
Yeah,
I
the
don't know, it
man.
gets a little chippy.
Oh,
Little
yeah.
chippy. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
husband has gotten in more than one fight, so he quit going. I'm like, you gotta, maybe it's better that you don't go. So
I feel you.
there's egos involved at every level. We just can't escape it when we're competitive. So speaking of competitive, postseason. It's going to be, first of all, it's been nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even want to ask you, but what is your biggest shock thus far? Because originally it had to be, I'm going to say, was it Columbus and then it was Miami? Like,
Yeah, of course, first Columbus lost and then Miami lost. Miami is the biggest shock. I think they were the odds-on favorite. I think everybody picked them to at least make it to the final. So yeah, that's a big shock. Then Columbus, I just don't think they had they couldn't figure out a way to get around the Red Bulls. I think the Red Bulls had a very good game plan. They played them very hard, and Columbus getting knocked out. Then you have Cincinnati, which I don't think is as big a shock just because they really faltered as they closed out the regular season. But MLS is the most unpredictable league in the world. We all know that. We all still are asked to make our predictions. We try our best, and inevitably we get half of them wrong.
I will have to say this though, based on the bracket, right? You probably filled out a bracket.
Yeah.
Part of the reason MLS does the best of three in the first round is that assuming that
The
supposedly
higher seed
the
should win.
should win because you have to
Yes.
outlast an opponent for an extended period of time. This isn't like a fluke. Oh, there was a handball and somebody wins 1-0.
Yeah.
But, and I don't want to say the better team is supposed to win because clearly in these cases, in those scenarios, I mean, would you agree that the better team in all those went on or no?
Yeah, in those series, I don't think we can say it was fluky that any of these teams that moved on, got lucky, like you said, with a weird handball call or something, and they win 1-0 on a penalty. No, I think the teams that played well deserve to move on in their series, which is super intriguing when you look at the regular season or if you look at the games on paper. I don't think anybody has a perfect bracket. I think everybody's bracket got messed up somehow, especially with the top three seeds in the East losing.
So no big surprises in your mind in the Western Conference thus far. I mean, nothing shocking, or is there something
No,
shocking to
no,
you?
nothing shocking. Although, it was an upset that Minnesota beat Salt Lake. But when you watch the games, not really. Minnesota looks very good. They played very well. I think they've really found their form. They found their tactical identity for real as they ended the regular season, which they ended the regular season on a high as well. So I don't think we should be surprised that they beat Salt Lake. They were really two teams that were just trending in the opposite direction in second halves of the season. And I think we all just got fooled because Salt Lake had such a good first half of the season.
Is and we'll deep dive into Minnesota and the Galaxy in a little bit here, but with Minnesota and Salt Lake, and you said two teams that were trending in the opposite direction. Was it as simple as the summer transfer window? I mean, Salt Lake losing a couple guys and Minnesota gaining a few guys, or
Yeah.
was it not as
Yeah.
simple as that?
Well, that's the easiest way to dumb it down, right? For all of us is to say, listen, Salt Lake and a huge part of them was Andres Gomez on the right wing and how fast he was, how he stretched the defense, how his ability to run behind the back line gave so much space for Chicho Arango to operate underneath. Uh,
But
they
also,
lost.
Chicho Arango just kind of, since his suspension, and then I
Yes.
mean, even before the transfer window, it just kind
Yeah.
of went
No,
sideways for him.
it looked like something happened. I don't know, behind the scenes. I don't know what happened, what caused the suspension. But since that, he scored one goal at the halfway mark. I was saying that's the MVP of the league. So his form mixed with Gomez's departure and then new signings like Gonçalves not really being the guy just yet. I think that was the downfall for Salt Lake, where on the other side, Minnesota, I thought good signings towards the second half of the season. Yeboah obviously is the number one up front who got the goals and just looks to be dangerous. Looks good at setting up his teammates. And like I said, the tactical formation, which I think they finally kind of locked down, 5-man back line. Hassani, Dotson, Will Trapp in the midfield. And then you've got so many options. They actually have a lot of depth up front now to rotate into those spots. I think they just look very good.
You being a former professional athlete, how important is competition in a roster? And just saying this because every coach says, I want good players. I want competition. Competition is the most important thing every day at training. And players saying, I want to win. These teams, I want to be on a winning team. And everybody
Yeah.
wants good rosters. But then sometimes when the competition comes in and there's competing for your spot, it doesn't always go so well. But so how do you balance that? How important is that as an athlete and then as a coach to navigate the egos, the competition, so it's like a positive thing?
I think as a player, it brings out the best in you. but I can't lie. I hated that when I played at Anderlecht, which was the most competitive team that I was on. Every offseason, no matter what, and we won the title 3 years in a row. Every offseason, the sporting director brought in 4 new players, and I kept looking at thinking we don't need any new players. We've got a squad right now. But then guys start to get comfortable. Every year they're bringing in a midfielder, and I saw him as the competition, so I had to continue to train hard. And I got to be honest, when I first arrived there, my first month, it was difficult for me because the midfielders just saw me as competition. I wasn't their friend. I wasn't there to be their guy. I was there to take their spot. And so it took a lot to get into the team. But then once you're in, then you have to fight to keep your spot. And I think that's very important. And so players probably don't like it when guys get signed in their position, but it's secretly, it's better for the team. Coaches love that. They want to have difficult decisions at the end of the week and then know that they have that depth on the bench that's come in and ready to make a difference in games. Every coach wants subs that are going to come in the game and change the game. And right now, I know we're talking about Minnesota. This is their podcast. They have guys coming off the bench that are difference makers now.
So they have guys that they can, even in the starting 11, right? They can change the way this team might look, might operate towards the end of the season. It started to be a little more clear, especially in the postseason, that like Hongwane was going to get the right the start as opposed to Sang Bin. But
Yep.
who is that? Does Greg Vanney have that with the Galaxy? It's kind of like if Paintsil and Peck are healthy, they're it, right? So
Yeah.
is there competition there?
Well, I think there's some competition, not for starting spots, though. I think they've figured out that their front four, it's Joveljic and Pooch, and then it's Peck and Paintsil. Those are their four guys. And then in the moment, they have a few guys. Marco Royce can come in. He can play as a center midfielder. He could play as a kind of dual attacking midfielder if they're chasing the game a little bit, or maybe later in the game when the spaces start to open up. Diego Fagundes is a solid player who can come in off the bench. He'll help you on both sides of the ball. So they've got a few guys that they can add in. I just don't think there's really question marks on the starting lineup for the Galaxy. Those four are locked in, I think.
When they brought in Marco Royce, would you have imagined that you were saying what you're saying now? Like, yeah, he's a good option off the bench, or did you think that that's how it was going to go?
To be honest, I was on the record as to saying I don't think the Galaxy need Marco Royce. They've got a front four that's locked on. All guys are firing on all cylinders. I think you bring in a guy like Marco Royce, it's just it's surplus, right? It's an extra guy, but he has so much quality. And then he played his first game where he comes in, makes a huge difference, gets a goal, maybe an assist or two against Atlanta, and you're thinking, oh wow. But I think the Galaxy have to find that balance. That's the midfield, right? Like, I don't think they can start Royce with Pooch in a big playoff game. I think you need more balance in the midfield. That's where Mark Delgado becomes very important, and Edwin Cerrillo is the glue that holds that whole team together.
Yes, and I was just thinking about, when you bring in a big name like Royce, or we've seen it on a lot of rosters, then maybe the challenge is, was that person told that that's what their role would be before they decided to come? And it goes back to the competition in the rosters, and the communication from the coach and the manager or the sporting director,
Yep.
whoever, is so important. So you don't have somebody upsetting the apple cart, especially when you're going so well.
Exactly. I think we're seeing something very similar at LAFC right now, where Olivier Giroud came in. He started a bunch of games. He's only scored twice. Both of them were in cup finals. He hasn't scored in the league. And now in the biggest game that they had, the knockout game against Vancouver, he was put to the bench. Now, he did come in the second half, and he did make a difference. I thought he played well in the second half and helped the game. But I think they have a big decision coming this weekend also as to who starts up front for LAFC.
And unfortunately, this is the way my brain works. It kind of is all over the place. But doesn't that kind of say, the status of this league?
Yeah.
That there's guys like they're probably expecting just to, waltz right in and.
Yep. Yeah, this isn't MLS from 7-8 years ago where the rosters weren't as deep. We didn't have, the TAM players that all came in, I think have really helped move this league forward and move the quality of the product on the field forward. So most guys like that, if they had that much quality, they came in and they were starting immediately, and for sure. And there wasn't really competition for their spots. Nowadays, much different in Major League Soccer.
Did you think there was a chance Vancouver was going to pull that off? I kind of did.
I mean, look, they played well for sure. In the end, in a tight game, LAFC had a few more difference makers. Obviously, Bogusz has been very good all season, scores a good goal, really good individual effort. But I think Vancouver should be proud of the way that they played in a 3-game series against LAFC, because last year they played LAFC and they lost in 2 games and it wasn't really close. So they're getting better. I still think they're a piece away from being in the, closer to the top upper echelon of the Western Conference, but they should be happy.
I mean, I don't know who makes your hiring decisions over there at MLS 360, but Vanni Sartini in studio for the playoffs.
I know.
That could be like
This
playoff. That could be television gold.
This guy is a walking quote machine and just makes us laugh at all times. I love that he is just himself, which he gives honest answers. Because you talk to some coaches and they try to beat around the bush and say a whole lot without saying anything at all, and he tells it how it is. So that's always fun to talk to him.
Oh man, we used to Cal and I used to talk to him before Minnesota would play Vancouver. Like he would agree to talk to us like off record, before just a Western Conference
Yeah,
game. And he was always great. Yeah, and like these one-liners he has. I mean, this just like I can't even imagine what it's like in his house. Like
yeah.
what that whole vibe and energy must be. But I always appreciated him. Okay, so I want to run down the different matchups and the different games before we dive a little bit more into Galaxy and Minnesota, which we just did a little
Okay.
bit. But when you look at the Eastern Conference and you look at New York City versus Red Bulls. I know you've got some Red Bull, blood flowing through you, but who do you have in this game? I mean, two teams that are just playing really well at the most
Yeah.
important time.
Yeah, 2 good teams right now that I think match up well with each other because they both know how to battle, right? And win 50-50s and win duels and win second balls, which I think is going to be very important in this game. I think this game comes down to the midfield, and I got to give the slight edge to New York City. I just think they have a few better players in midfield, and they're playing at home. They won the season series against the Red Bulls this season. They beat them twice already. But I do think it's going to be very close, probably low scoring, probably comes down to one moment of brilliance. And I give the slight edge to New York City.
So when you talk about one moment, assuming everybody's healthy and everybody's available,
Yeah.
who does that one moment come from? Either team, because they both have a couple guys on
Yeah.
either roster that could do it. And,
Yeah. I think for the Red Bulls, it's Emil Forsberg and Lewis Morgan. Those are the two that you expect in the big moments when the game is tight. Spaces are small. Someone has to pull off a little bit of magic. That's those 2 guys. And for New York City, I think it's Alonso Martinez and Santi Rodriguez.
That last game against Cincinnati, Martinez was kind of
Yeah.
non-existent.
No, he's gone. He's had a few games this season where you don't notice him as much, but I do think when you score 15 goals in a season and some of the goals that he did score, he's shown he's got some quality and he makes really good runs. If you watch him, he just is constantly moving. He's constantly trying to get beyond the back line. He's constantly trying to find space to shoot. So I love that in a striker. So him and Santi Rodriguez, just because he's the one with the, technically probably the most talented player in that series, right? So he has the moments that if he gets the ball in the box and he can off balance a defender, he can get his shot off.
With Santi Rodriguez, do you think he's better when Maxi's on the field or not? I mean, you would think they would because they're so great, but I don't. They're just not the same. They don't play the same way.
No, they don't. I think actually Maxi brings more out in Alonso Martinez that Alonso Martinez makes so many runs, and I don't think he gets rewarded with the passes. But when Maxi's out there, he looks for him with those passes. And even if they don't come off, it's very similar to what I talked about Andres Gomez for Real Salt Lake. Just the ability to run behind, and you play a few balls behind, it starts to stretch the back line, right? They have to start dropping a little and respecting that space. Then that gives more space for Santi Rodriguez to operate, for Hannes Wolf to operate, and for Maxi Morales. So I think what he does, even if he's not scoring, is still very important to New York City.
Orlando and Atlanta. Orlando, a former club of yours
Yeah.
as well. You've
Yeah.
got your buddy Dax McCarty on the other side, like living his best life right now.
Yeah.
Should have maybe been done before the playoffs even started. And
Yes.
they've been on this incredible run. Brad Guzan's been out of his mind once he got unstuck from the net. Like
Yeah.
what's
What a moment. I mean, honestly,
What a
that
moment.
performance from Brad Guzan in that whole series against Atlanta will, I think, go down in history as one of the best postseason performances we've seen from a goalkeeper in MLS history. It was amazing to see what he's done. I think Dax was actually the key to Atlanta in game 3, the way that he played, the way that he was able to spring counterattacks for the first 60 minutes. Listen, Orlando City's probably the strongest team left in the Eastern Conference, but this one's a toss-up too. And in my predictions, I predicted Atlanta's going to keep it going. I think they've just got so much momentum on their side. They've got confidence, they've got swagger, they've got Dax, and they've got Brad Guzan, they just seem to be on this magical run. Now, having said all that, Orlando is the better team for sure. They're more organized, they have a better midfield. But I think there's a big question mark at the striker position, like there has been for most of the season. And I don't know if Oscar Pareja will make that change or if he's just going to keep sticking with Ramiro Enrique, who hasn't really scored in a while. But Duncan Maguire looks hungry. If he's healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if he got the start.
Well, and with Dax, I just want to go back to him real quick because every point in his career, just about right, he's until later in his career, more recently, he's played like every minute of every game in a very
Yeah.
difficult position. This year, he didn't play that much. It's like he's
Yeah.
fresh in the most
Yeah.
important time. It's like
I know.
crazy.
I know. And I was very surprised when he came off at around the 59th minute in game 3. I don't know if that's age and tired legs or if he's dealing with something, but the game changed a lot when he got off the pitch for Atlanta. So I think the longer he can stay on the field in this game against Orlando City, the better it is for Atlanta.
Well, and it's a one and done, and they had been
Yeah.
on this torrid stretch with the
Yeah.
Montreal, you know what I mean, just everything and the short turnaround and the travel and everything else. So, like you would think having the couple weeks off and all that, like hopefully he's in a good spot. And it's going back to Orlando, which is an important
His,
place for him. So,
yeah, close to his hometown.
exactly. Okay, Western Conference. So let's move to the other game first before we really deep dive into Minnesota. LAFC Seattle, which we hit on briefly, but
Yeah.
LAFC Seattle, I mean, this.
This one's crazy. Okay, so LAFC in the last 10 games against Seattle haven't lost. They played them 4 times this year alone. They beat them all 4. They've only given up 1 goal. They've scored 9. So you got to say LAFC is the favorite. But to win 5 times against the same team in one season, I think this game is going to be very tight. I think Brian Schmetzer is going to have a very good game plan. I think he's going to come in and sit really deep to give no space for LAFC to counterattack into because that's their strength. When Denny Bouanga gets space, listen, they played in the playoffs last year in Seattle. Danny Bouanga got space in behind 1 time, and he
And
punished
he
Seattle, and
finished.
they won 1-0. And so I don't think Seattle will give him any space to operate. And so then it comes down to, I think, a decision for Steve Cherundolo, whether he goes back to that 4-3-3 like he switched to at halftime against Vancouver to get more control of the game, more numbers into attack, Eddie Atuesta on the ball more often to play forward passes. I give the edge to LAFC in a very tight game just because they have the difference makers in attack again. So between Bouanga, Oliveira, Bogusz, perhaps Giroud off the bench again, one of those guys I think can make a play in the final third.
And Schmetzer can only fit so many things in that tiny little notebook that he's writing down. I asked him once, I'm like, can you actually read your writing when you go in, you know? And he says it's just like one word here and there. It's not like full sentences, which I would need to write full sentences. Otherwise, it would be like, what the hell did that word mean? Why did I write that down? But then for Seattle, who is it, let's say to even make this a game, 2 things.
Yeah.
Does Seattle take anything from what Vancouver did on the road at LAFC? Because they basically held them to 1 chance. It was Bogusz and he finished. And secondly, who is going to be the difference maker if Seattle wants to find a goal? Because that's a position also that they've struggled with a little bit. You know, Jordan Morris is playing up there and we know what he can do. But in general, what does Seattle need to do offensively then?
Well, I think they need to be fully healthy. And so that means Rusnak has to be on the field and Jordan Morris have to be on the field because those are the 2 players that if you're going to defend deep and you're going to defend in a low block, Jordan Morris is one of the best counterattacking players in the league just because of his speed and he makes good runs as well. And Rusnak is the player that can play those passes. So if those 2 are on the field, I'm pretty sure they'll get a chance or 2, right? You know, they've got to beat Hugo Lloris. They've got to beat Aaron Long in that back line. But they can do it. Another thing we should talk about is set pieces in that game because both teams are good on set pieces. They defend them well. They attack them well. They've got big center backs that come forward. They've got guys that can finish on set pieces. So especially in a tight game, those become very, very important.
LA Galaxy, Minnesota United, which we've hit on pieces of it already. And I just had Hassani Dotson on from Minnesota, who obviously plays in the midfield for the Loons. But what makes Ricky Puig so difficult to play against and what makes him so special. And I don't know if you have, some inside scoop, but what does like Greg Vanny or some of his teammates say about him? Because we can see it.
Yeah.
But what's your perspective and what's sort of the inside scoop on him?
Well, I played for 6 months with Ricky at the end of my career when he joined the team. And from the very first training session, I could tell that there were two things. One, he moves very quickly and he never stops moving. And two, he plays at a pace faster than anybody in MLS, I think. And so he sees the game fast, and then he, technically, when he receives the ball, dips his shoulder, starts dribbling. He can pick the ball up 60 yards from goal, and it seems like within 2 seconds he's facing the back line and he's 30 yards from goal. And now he's got decisions to make. So very key to this game will be Hassani, Dotson, and Will Trapp. Can they stay in the midfield? Can they stay clogged? Can they not get caught up in just chasing Ricky around the field? Because sometimes he'll drop really deep to get on the ball. And I don't think you want your two holding midfielders to be chasing him all the way out there, even if you're forcing him to play backwards, because sometimes he'll play back and then he'll go get it again. And now he's facing forward again. So tactical discipline, I think, is going to be very key against Ricky Pooch, because the energy he shows for 90 minutes also, like 2 goals in stoppage time against Colorado, done and dusted, wraps the game up himself just with pure energy and fitness. Like, it is crazy. He's a very, very special player.
And now he's had a few weeks rest. So that was on short rest. Okay, the other
Yeah.
thing is too, you just mentioned he likes to drop deep, which we've seen. I mean, he'll drop basically back to the center backs, which,
Yeah.
oftentimes I feel like we see we've seen a few tens do that.
Yeah.
And you don't always love it when they drop that deep, but he also likes to go really wide. And
Yeah.
sometimes he'll drift and kind of become unmarked almost. So how important is it for the central midfielders, for Hassani and Wilt to stay
Yeah.
central, or to then you pass him off depending on Minnesota's formation? What do you do there?
Yeah. I think those two guys need to stay central, and then it's just all about communication. Listen, the whole game plan should be like, listen, whoever is close to him, stay tight on him, try to force him to play backwards, put him in a difficult game. If he drifts out wide, he likes to create those overloads. Someone has to slide out and help. If it's the winger or the wing back, those players have to be keyed in on him, know that he's drifting wide, know that he's trying to create an overload, and try to not get put in a numbers up situation. Another key to this game, in my opinion, is going to be the left side, sorry, of the Minnesota defense. And so I think that's Jefferson Diaz and Rosales, right?
Yep.
Because that's Gabriel Peck's area.
Yeah.
And so he has the ability to dribble by anybody. I haven't seen any defender that's been able to stop him consistently for 90 minutes in 1v1 situations. So sometimes it's got to be 2v1. Sometimes you got to come over and help. Can't dive in, got to try to run with him, got to try to be physical. But the way that those two can communicate and defend well will be key to this game as well.
Well, and Rosales is just coming back from international duty with Honduras, which I believe he probably played the most out of anybody that went away for Minnesota. I mean, Dane St. Clair played, but I don't, obviously he's a goalkeeper. So that should be another point, though. I mean, how important is a player like is Dane St. Clair? We've talked about a few goalkeepers in these playoffs, but to come up big against that attacking players.
Yeah, I think Galaxy created the most chances in the league this year, or top two. And so they also went undefeated at home. They scored a lot of goals at that stadium this season, so they will get their chances. And any team in the playoffs that's going to do anything has to have their goalie step up and make the big save when they need it. Dane St. Clair this playoffs has done that. He came up with the big save, especially in game one in Salt Lake. Like he was amazing, made the big play when he needed to. And so he's going to have a good game, that's for sure.
I don't think he's lacking confidence from what I've been able to tell from Dane St. Clair. So I think we'll be okay, and he's coming off the international duty. But lastly, just Minnesota United. You just said they've sort of solidified their formation. They've solidified what they want to be or will look like under Eric Ramsey and with these additions in the second half of the season. What's the best thing or maybe moment or thing that you saw from them after they got out of their bit of a tailspin in the middle of the summer and got themselves sorted, that said, okay, they know what they're doing now. They know what they want to be. They know how they want to look, and that you think that they need to do against the Galaxy?
Well, I think there were just moments when I just think about the Salt Lake series, right? Tactically, organized. And then when they have the ball, they have solutions. Like I like when Carlos Harvey kind of steps up a little bit and can get into midfield. He's another guy I played with at the Galaxy and is physically an absolute beast. I hated training against him because he's so strong. But he's a defensive midfielder for most of his career. And so now that he's in the back line, he knows how to step into midfield with the ball. I think Hassani Dotson adds a lot to the attack just by his sheer running, like the way that he moves out of midfield. Sometimes you see him on an overlap joining the attack because he's played all over. He understands the game. And then you've got smart players like Robin Ludd, who can drop underneath. He finds the spaces. You can put him anywhere on the field, and I guarantee you he's going to create chances, and he's going to be one of the best players on the field. So they have a real understanding now, I think, of how to be organized, not to hurt themselves when they're in possession. And then also, as soon as the ball turns over, the way that they get back, the way that they defend together as a team, and difference makers go a long way in Major League Soccer. And I think Yeboah has been a difference maker so far.
Awesome. So prediction for this game.
High scoring. The one game this weekend, I think that will have some goals in it. I do think I'm going to give the edge to the Galaxy at home, a place that they haven't lost this season. I'd say 3-2.
3-2. I'm looking forward to goals. I'll take goals, after a couple of these, the Real Salt Lake series.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this matchup as well because I think both teams are coming in with a ton of confidence, and it's going to be a really, really good matchup. And that hopefully has some goals.
So who's your final? Is it? Because your bracket is busted, so it can't be exactly maybe what you had in your bracket. But so if you had to pick, you got LAFC and LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
And you said NYCFC and Orlando City.
Yeah.
No, you said
I said Atlanta.
Atlanta, yeah.
I'm gonna take LAFC and New York City in the final.
Oh man, it's like an MLS dream right there. Although to be honest, if it could be Atlanta or it could be Galaxy, and I
know.
Anyways.
What's crazy though to think about going into this playoffs, I think most of us thought Miami or Columbus are going to the final from the East. So now to think either Orlando, Atlanta, New York are going to be in MLS Cup is wild.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. That's why you play the game, right?
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
the old adage. Well, thank you for taking the time. I know you're incredibly busy, and I don't know when you got to get back into the studio, but I'm sure it's soon here. So I appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sacha. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
All right, everybody, that does it for this week's episode of Sound of the Loons. We'll see if we do a postseason wrap-up after the game against the Galaxy, or if we're talking about advancing to the Western Conference Final. We'll chat next time.